This is Joseph Severe of Sillerton, and today we're going to be looking at the origin of American surnames. So, specifically, I'm going to be looking at the 1,000 most common surnames in America from the list that I see on Forebears, which is like a website, like a genealogical website containing information about the origin of names, the origin of place names, surnames, all sort of that thing. Have like a very good census of all the American surnames that is popular for like the last year. I think the data is updated recently in 2024. So I'm just guessing that, but I think their data is really correct in terms of the number of people that have the surnames. So we're gonna take a look at the American surnames that are well popular in the United States. And so the thing is that when we take a look at the surnames here, we need to divide it into different categories in order to see how one surname is different from another. So what we're gonna be doing here is we're gonna try to look at first the nation of origin of each of these surname. So where does the surname come from? Well, what is the language of origin of the surname? Like what language does the surname derive from? What kind of people, what sort of people often have the surname? Maybe English people often have this surname. Maybe Scottish often have that surname. So it can be different. It can vary based on the nationality, or So so the nationality definition here, the nation definition I'm looking at is not like nation in terms of like country, but more like nation in terms of like ethnic identity. So it's not that if I just put British, for example, as a nation, because Britain, the United Kingdom is a nation. So if we put British as the origin of these surnames, it's going to be meaningless because their surnames that are more popular in Scotland compared to England. So we put British there, it's just going to be the same mark for every of these guys, and then oh, America's British, but America's actually not that much British because if you take a look at the different surnames, there's going to be English surname, there's going to be a Scottish surname. It's not all British. It's not all sort of like yeah, under the mark of the British, just to say. So the nation of origin here is just gonna be the ethnic identity of the surname. Like, what is the identity of the people who happen to have the surname? It's yeah, it's just gonna be looking at each surname, and we're gonna be able to look at that later on. But yeah, after those two, we're gonna take a look at the meaning of the surname. What does the surname mean? Which is really important. If you know the meaning of the surname, then what you basically know the reason for which you have that surname, why your ancestors were named in such a way, for example. And accompanying the meaning of the surnames is gonna be the type of surname. So there are three predominant types of surnames that we're gonna be taking a look at. So the first one is occupational, which are surnames that describe an occupation, a job that a person has. So, for example, like if a person of this generation is, well, a typewriter, for example, if that person and the family has been doing typewriting job for long enough time, then the specialized trade is passed down from generation to generation, and then the people from outside the family are just going to refer to them as a typewriting family. From which point, then they're going to name the children, the offsprings, with the surname typewriter, like to signify that they were originally typewriters in society's eye view. So with that, they take the surname as their own from their occupation. That's occupational surname. The next one is patronymic surname, which is the most popular one so far. It's just surname that derive from the name of your father. For example, if the person is a son of another person, then yeah, that's the kind of patronymic surname. Oh, who are you the son of? And you say that, oh, I'm X son of Y, and the son of Y is just going to be the surname later on that's passed down to the family. So that's what patronymic surname is. It's just surname that derive from your paternal lineage. And the last one is cognomial surname, which is less popular than the other two, but still very much prevalent. So cognomial surname, cognomial derives from the Latin word cognomina, which means like a name that accompanies a name. So in ancient Rome, there is a system called tria nomina, which is like three names for one person. So if one person is born, they are going to have three different names within their full name to signify who they are. So we have the prenomen, which is the name, the first name of the person, the nomen, which is like the name of the gens, the family that they come from, and the cognomen, which is the nickname. or like sort of like a description name to tell that person apart from a different person or a different family. So cognomial is like a nickname that is given to a person by society based on the personality traits, the characteristics, the outlooks, or sort of like the odd features of the person that the person has, so that it becomes like a nickname of that person, and later on the nickname is just passed down from generation to through the person's children, and it's just gonna become their surname basically. So those are the three types of surname we're going to be taking a look at. And then we're going to take a look at the number of the people who have the surnames, who have each surname. So for America, being a nation that is influenced by Western European sort of like identity of what a surname is, uh, even the most common surname in America only has around 3 million people having the surname. So it's like 0.0001, if I check it correctly, 0.001 no, actually 0.30 and 1% of the entire country's population, which is around 350 million. So it's a very small percentage, even though that's the most popular surname. The reverse case can be seen in East Asian countries, for example, like China. In China, you have like around 50. All right, right now I think it sits at around 1.5 billion. Actually, I don't remember correctly in the population of the country, but it sits around definitely above 1 billion, and then below 2 billion right now. So around I think around 40% of the country has like the top 10 surnames of China. So if you go to the street and 10 people you pick out of the I don't know 100 people that you pick in the street, 40 of them are gonna have the surnames that are in the top 100, are in the top 10 surnames of the country. So you're gonna have people like the most common one thing is Wang, and then it goes to Li, and then to Chang, and then to Chen, and a lot of them after that. So the top 10 surnames occupy like around a very big percentage of the entire country's population, which is ridiculous because they have to distinguish themselves from each other by using first name. But in like formal settings, they're just going to refer to each other by their surname. So you can have like, I don't know, like three Mr. Wong in the same company, which is like, it doesn't serve the purpose of a surname, which is to distinguish one person from another. Yeah, but there's also the case in India with the Sikh religious community. They have like every single male person in the Sikh religious community. They all have the same surname, Singh, which means lion. That's given to like the descendants of the first followers of the first guru of the Sikh community. So it's all the same surname. So it doesn't really serve that purpose of a surname, but that's like the not the Western like idealization of a surname. So like a Western identity of a surname is just gonna be like the name that's used to distinguish one family from another, and that's the reason why. In the same case for like in America, even though like we have like 1,000, a list of like 1,000 surnames that are most popular. That 1,000 surname is still like not really, doesn't really take up that much of a chunk out of the population compared to like the East Asian countries, or like in like in India. But that's just gonna be, yeah, what we're gonna be looking at right now. And after that, it's going to be the linguistic constructions of the surname. So, what does a surname constitute of? What is the origin of the word of the surname? So, it can come from different origins of in same language, for example. So, it's just going to be interesting to look at. So, we're going to take a look at the first surnames right now. And it's going to be number one, it's going to be Smith. So Smith, that's the most common surname in the English-speaking world, I think, and it's also the most common surname in England. I think it's also in Australia. It's also in New Zealand and Canada and the United States. Just basically every single country that the English language has a big influence in. So the surname Smith, the nation of origin, it's English. The surname is English, but more specifically, it's Anglo-Saxon English. So Anglo-Saxon here refers to the people. They're called the Anglo-Saxons because, if I remember correctly, after the conquest of after the Romans leave the British Isle, a different group of people came from northern Germany. They're called the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes. Those three. They are Germanic people. These three Germanic tribes came over from northern Germany to the British Isle, and they replaced the native Celts people, the native Bretons, Britons, Brits people, and they became the predominant group after the Romans left until 1066 when William the Conqueror, the Norman, came over, and then bam, the whole country became Anglo-Norman. But before that, it was Anglo-Saxon. So Anglo-Saxon was like it's like kind of like the not the indigenous, but like the group that has the most influence on the present day like English identity. So the English language is still a Germanic language, thanks to the fact that it was spoken by the Angles and the Saxons who came from northern Germany. So it's still a Germanic language. So these people have like the foundational sort of influence on modern day English identity. And well, the Britons like just migrated westward and then came to the peninsula called Wales, and then they became the Welsh. Yeah, that's a whole other matter. But yeah, so Smith, it's an English Anglo-Saxon surname. And the meaning of the surname is just a smith. A smith is, well, a craft person who works metal into the. I'm sorry, no, actually, a craft person who works metal into desired forms by using a hammer and other tools, sometimes beating the metal to form shape, and it most commonly refers to a blacksmith. So a smith is just any metal worker basically that uses tools in order to shape metals into desired tools for everyday usage, and it most commonly refers to blacksmith. So blacksmith is the job in in the medieval sorry medieval age where people well use tools to shape the metal. Well, most commonly here steel and iron to form tools like it can be swords, it can be like a plunge, it can be any of those like agricultural tools that you see in like a medieval farms, I guess. So those are blacksmith. And the reason for which blacksmith became such a popular job with the surname Smith is because it's like a very common specialized trade. So if you go to any medieval village, there's just gonna be at least one smith, like one blacksmith, working there, because it's a very much necessary job for the survival of the people in the village. But it's not like an easy enough job for every single person, or like a job that is significant to the point that everybody has to learn it to survive. There can be one person. It's called like a system of a specialization, where like 90% of the village work on the field, when 10% became craftsperson to produce things like tools for the farmers to work with. So that's why Smith became such a popular surname, because it's everywhere. Blacksmiths are just everywhere in the everyday life. And Smith is obviously an occupational surname. The number of bearers is the most common surname, and it has around 3 million people bearing the surname until now, in 2024 at least. And the linguistic construction of a surname, it comes from the Middle English word Smith, which comes from the Old English word just Smith, same pronunciation, and comes from the Proto-Germanic word smithas, which all means like to smite, to hit something very much strongly with like a hammer to form shape. So that's where it comes from. So here we got Smith as our first one, is our the Anglo-Saxon, and the second one we got here that I accidentally clicked towards, we got Johnson. Johnson is the second most common surname in America up until now. So Johnson, it's the nation of origin of Johnson is English, but it's Anglo-Norman. So that's significant here. Anglo-Norman. So the Normans were the people who replaced the Anglo-Saxons at the turn of the millennia in the year 1066, when William the Conqueror, who was the Duke of Normandy, whose lineage is actually Viking, but the Vikings migrated to France, and the first Duke of Normandy, Rollo, was a Viking who was given the land in Normandy by the King of France, by the King of France for the sake of like protecting the French from the Vikings. And so, well, Normans, they're still well Vikings, but they became Francophile, like Francized, or they became French. Just that. So the name Norman itself is already like an indication of the Viking origin of these people. Norman derived from the word Northman, Northman in the Proto Scandinavian language, I think, and Northmen just mean people from the north. So refers to the Scandinavian peninsula and Denmark in general. So the Normans in 1066, William the Conqueror, the Duke of Normandy, brought a great army over to England and defeated Harold Godwinson in the Battle of Hastings and became the first Norman king of England. And from that point on, every single monarchs in English history were descendants of William the Conqueror, up until King Charles III to this very day. So Anglo-Normans. So the first century, you see that the first millennia, England was dominated by the Celtic Brits, the Celtic Britons, the Romans, and then the Anglo-Saxons. And the second millennium, it's just going to be Anglo-Norman, and then the Anglo-Norman and the Anglo-Saxon mixed together became the English people. Yeah, but Johnson, it's an Anglo-Norman surname. The language of origin, it's John is a Hebrew word, is a Hebrew name. John is a Hebrew Semitic name. But son is an English component, which means the son of something. So Johnson, you see that? And Hebrew is a Semitic language, and English here is Germanic language. So the meaning of a surname, which is basically son of John. The type of surname here, we see the first patronymic surname in the list. Number of bearers is around 2.1 million people up until 2024. And so John here is a biblical name. It comes from the New Testament. There are two very famous characters in the New Testament who were both saints. The first person was Saint John the Baptist. Saint John the Baptist was the cousin of our Lord Jesus Christ, and he was a preacher, famous for being the voice in the wilderness, described in the Bible. And John the Baptist, he was a preacher in the River Jordan. He baptized our Lord Jesus Christ with water in the famous scene that became the Feast of the Epiphany, where the Holy Spirit came, and then Holy Spirit landed on the shoulder of Christ, and a voice from heaven comes down and says that you are my beloved son. That's where it all comes from. So Saint John the Baptist is a very popular saying in the medieval age. So much so that John became like the most popular name for man in Western Europe and even in Eastern Europe during the medieval age. So everywhere that you go, pretty much there's gonna be like 10 people in the same village named John. So in England it's John, in French it's Jean, in Spain it's gonna be Juan, in Portuguese it's gonna be Joan, in Russia it's gonna be Ivan. Let's see, anything else? There's Johann in German. There's also Jan in Scandinavian countries. Giovanni in Italian. There's Ioannis in Greece, and yeah, everywhere you go in the medieval age, there's just gonna be at least 10 people in the same place named John. The name is so popular, and that's also the reason why Johnson became the most popular patronymic, because there's so many Johns. So there's a lot of people who are sons of John, and Johnson became obviously the most popular surname. So the name John is not only applying to Saint John the Baptist, who was later actually decapitated by King Herod the Great. No, actually, no, Herod Agrippa. Herod Agrippa was the son of Herod the Great, who decapitated Saint John. So Saint John the Baptist, he accused King Herod Agrippa of the sin of incest, because Herod Agrippa married the wife of his brother, of his dead brother. And the wife of his dead brother is not happy with St. John the Baptist, so she demanded her daughter to plead to the king to decapitate John the Baptist and put his head on a plate offered to her. So yeah, that's just a crazy story from the New Testament. But St. John the Baptist, with his feast day on 24th of June, is a very popular saint. And yeah, a lot of countries celebrate his feast day as like a holiday or something like that on many levels, I guess. But but there's also a second person named John in the Bible, and that's Saint John the Apostle. So we need to distinguish here. John the Baptist, the person who baptized Christ with water, and Saint John the Apostle. is one of the 12 apostles of our Lord Jesus Christ. John the Apostle was like the beloved apostle of Christ. He was like described as the youngest among the apostles, and also like he was the one that was most beloved by Christ. And Saint John the Apostle is famous for not only being the writer of the Gospel of Saint John, but also being the writer of the three epistles in later part of the Bible of the New Testament, and he's also allegedly the same as John of Patmos, who was the writer of the Revelation, later known as the Book of the Apocalypse, the book that describes how the second coming will turn out to be, and then like heavens, the four horsemen of heaven's gonna come down, bring affliction to a whole of humanity, all of that. So Saint John is famous for all of those things. He's known as the evangelist. So these are the two Johns that are very famous in the Bible, and I would say that every single John, Jean, Joanne, Giovanni, Ivan, wherever it is that you are in Western Europe and Eastern Europe, are named after one of these two. So the name itself, John. So John is the English form, the English Anglo-Saxon form of the Norman name Jehan or Jehan. Jehan derives from the Greek word for John, that is Ioannis, and Ioannis derives from the Hebrew name Yohanan or Yehohanan. So Yehohanan, Yeho is the name of God in Hebrew, that is abbreviated with the four letters YHYW, I think. Yeah, yeah, YHWH. Yeah, YHWH. That's the four letter for the name of God in Hebrew. So Yeho refers to God, and Hanan is gracious. So God is gracious, Yehohanan. That's the meaning of the name John. And it's a very popular surname, thanks to the fact that John is so popular in the first place. And then moving on, we got the surname Williams. Williams. So William itself, when people think of the name William, they think of the English. They think of, well, William the Conqueror. So it's got to be English. But it actually, Williams itself as a form is actually a Welsh surname. It's more often a Welsh surname. So the thing is that okay, so just gonna talk about the nation of origin first, and obviously here it originates from the nation of of Wales, and is a Welsh Norman surname. So the language of origin is still English. It's not Welsh. It's still English in terms of origin, and the meaning here is just son of William, and the type of surname is just patronymic. It's the son of William basically, and number of bearers is around 2 million people, and the construction of the surname is really interesting because if you think of the name William, as I said before, you often think of like an English name. But actually, if it ends with S, any surnames that ends with S and start with like a personal name is often Welsh, like weirdly enough, because the Welsh, when they were conquered by the English, before they were conquered by the English, the Welsh has a system of patronymic marking that goes as following. So if you are the son of William in Welsh, and like Welsh is a Celtic language, so in in Welsh Celtic, you're gonna be called like Ap Gwilym, which means a son of William. So Ap here is the patronymic marker, meaning the son of. Ap Gwilym means son of William. But after the English conquer Wales in the 14th century, I think, in the reign of King Edward I, that patronymic marking became kind of troublesome for the English people in England to pronounce. So the Welsh, they anglicized their surname. They removed the alp, and since they think to themselves that, oh, it's just alp just means a son of something. So why don't we just say of something, like John of Williams became John Williams. The S here is the possessive marker. So S here is just like Williams, just of Williams. So John of Williams, instead of like Sean of William, it became a John Williams. So just ended at that. And yeah, that's pretty much the reason for which the surname Williams is Welsh in origin, and it's actually not well English in origin in a certain sense. And to this day, Williams is still like pretty much like one of the top 10 most common surnames in Wales. in Wales. Like in England, there's gonna be a different form for it, but in Wales, it's just gonna be Williams. So the surname Williams itself, the name William, um, it comes from the Anglo-Norman name William, which comes from the Proto-Germanic word Willihelmus. Willihelmus is a Proto-Germanic word with two components. Willia means the will of somebody, like like the desire or the will of a person, and helmas means a helmet, literally a helmet. So like it as a whole, the name means like will helmet, probably strong will helmet, but they don't have space, so they just call it will helmet, like a person with like a very strong will person, I guess. That's maybe a name to describe them. But yeah, so at Gwillem is just will helmet, meaning strong will helmet or something like that. Um, so William became popular thanks to the story of a very famous saint in the ninth century. He was Saint William of Gellon. Saint William of Gellon was the Duke of Toulouse, which is a city in southern France. And when he was the Duke of Toulouse, William of Gellon joined effort with the French king to fight against the Muslim invaders in southern Spain. So at the time, Spain was a Muslim country because it was invaded by the Muslims from Morocco. So Spain, the Muslims in Spain were forming a plan trying to get up to France and then conquer France as well. But thankfully, the French totally defeated, and get the Muslims back to Spain. And Saint William of Gellon was one of these people who helped finding the Muslims and then drive back the Muslims back to Spain. He later founded a monasteries, and then he became a hermit himself. So going from a duke, he became a hermit, and he was later canonized as a saint. And because he is such a popular saint in the medieval royalty, because he was both a royalty, a royal person, and also like a saint, a lot of people were named after him, including William the Conqueror. So yeah, because of that, William the Conqueror brought the name to England. The Anglo-Norman nobility brought the name to England as well, and when the Anglo-Normans settled alongside the Welsh, the Welsh also adopted this name, and it became Gwilym in the Welsh language. And here in the picture, you can see on the top, there's Saint William of Gellon with praying to like a skull and the cross of our Christ. At the bottom, there's like a picture, a photo from the Bayeux Tapestry, a Norman tapestry, with William the Conqueror on it. So these are like the two most famous William that from which the surname originates. All right. So next one we're gonna have is Brown. Brown is the first cognomial surname in the list. So Brown is pretty much very clearly an Anglo-Saxon surname. The language of origin is English, Germanic, obviously, and any person with a Brown surname has such a surname because their ancestor was called the Brown. So it can refer to anything. It can refer to like hair, like in photo, in the painting here, you see like a person with brown hair. You can refer to the clothes. They can have like brown clothing. You can refer to the skin as well. A person with brown like complexion. Their skin is not white, but kind of like a bit tan. So that will be kind of brown that we're talking about here. The top surname is obviously cognomial. The number of bearers of the surname is around 1,700,000 people in the 2024 census. And the linguistic construction of the name of the surname is pretty much clear cut. Brown comes from Middle English brau, which comes from Old English brun, which comes from Proto-Germanic brunas, which comes from the Proto-Indo-European word bear, which means the color brown. But interestingly, bear is also the ancestor of the word bear, which refers to the animal. And this is because at the time, most bears in Western Europe were brown. They have brown fur. So people refer to the color of the animal, the animal itself, by the color of its skin, of its fur. So that's the origin of surname Brown. It's pretty much clear cut. If you have a surname, you just know that, well, my ancestors like the color brown a lot, or they have like brown complexion, brown physical features. So that's why they brought the surname here. But yeah, it's a pretty clear cut surname, straightforward. All right, next one is Jones. Jones is well the same as Johnson, but while Johnson is the Anglo-Norman version, Jones is the Welsh Norman version. So remember the thing that I said before about Williams. Any surname that ends with S and start with a first name, most likely, very much most likely Welsh in origin. So Jones is one of those ones. So Jones is a Welsh Norman surname, same as Johnson, because yeah, it's from the same root. It also derives from Hebrew, English, meaning here it's just the same thing, son of John. And the type of surname is just patronymic. Around 1,600,000 people have the surname. And the surname Jones, it's actually from the Welsh reading of the Anglo-Norman name Johann. So Johann, like or Jehan or John, when it came to England, it became John. But when it came to Wales, it became Sean. Sean, and like in the name Sean in Irish, because Irish and Irish, Scottish, Scottish Gaelic, and Welsh are all Celtic languages. They all have sort of like pretty much the same pronunciation in some parts. So the name Sean is the Welsh reading of the name Johann, which is John in England. So it derives from the same roots. God is gracious, Johannan. Yeah, it's pretty much clear cut. And Jones is just like a very much Welsh surname. You can see it's still pretty much the top ranking surname in Welsh and in Wales, alongside like Williams. So if your ancestor or you yourself have the surname Jones, it's just mostly very much like the case that you guys came from Wales. Yeah. All right. Next one is Davis. This one is weird. Davis is weird. So you see that the same pattern S ending, Davy starting. So it's a Welsh surname, but it's purely Welsh. It's purely Welsh. It's different from any other surname. It's purely Welsh. The language of origin is either Welsh or Hebrew. I put or here because it's pretty much like unsure. I'm unsure about the origin here. It's either Welsh is a Celtic language and Hebrew is Semitic, so that makes sense here. So the meaning of the surname Davis or Davies. Davis is the American form. Davies is the British form, like Sir Humphrey Davies, the famous scientist. Um, so the meaning of the surname Davis is son of David or David. David is a native Welsh name. It's a Welsh name that is not derived from any other names, like from England, not derived from like Scots, Scottish, or any of the languages. It does not derive from any of that. It's just very much a Welsh name. So the vet, most likely, from my theory at least, derived from the kingdom Dyfed, which is in southwestern Wales. So any person who comes from the kingdom of Dyfed later came to be called Dyfed, meaning that that guy's from Dyfed. Let's call him Dyfed. So it's just that. If you come from the kingdom of Dyfed, you're called Dyfed. And yeah, that's the origin of the name most probably. And but the thing is that when the English people they came to Wales, when they listened to the pronunciation of the Welsh name, they just came to think to themselves like, okay, the vet, the vet sounds a hell lot like David. So why not just call him David? And that's how it came to be. And later, just like pretty much every single rendition of the surname of the name David came to be anglicized as David. So the first major person in Welsh history to be recorded with the name David was King David ap Owen, who was the son of a guy named Owen, who was like I think the first king of a kingdom in Wales, I think. But David ap Owen was the first major historical figure in Wales to have the name David, and in this image here, you can see in the history in the Historica Cambria, in the history of Cambria, a book that was published in 1534 about the history of Wales from an English perspective. His name was anglicized to David Ap Owen. David Ap Owen. So the name David is interesting because it started out as a very much pure Welsh name, but later became to be anglicized as David and be given like a false etymology. So David is just most likely referring to like the kingdom of the and the people that come from it instead of like referring to King David. So I also included a photo of King David here, just to make sure that I don't miss anything here. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have the surname Davis, then your ancestors were very much purely Welsh, and they were purely Welsh to the point that they have a name that is like pretty much not non-existent in any other languages, but came to be anglicized as David. But yeah, and if we go back to the genealogy tree, and if we're trying to no the etymological origin, then the name David comes from Hebrew. It comes from Hebrew, uh, David, which this means like beloved, like a person who is beloved by somebody else. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And also, just to add, the patron saint of Wales is Saint David. Yeah. So there might be a connection there between the two. But from what I can see, then Saint David is called in Wales as Sant Dewi, Sant Devi, or Sant Devi. It's not connected. Like the orthography is totally different from David. So I'm really not sure about this one. But yeah, so that's for Davis. Next one is Muller. Muller, it's an Anglo-Saxon surname, and it derives from the English language. Well, and the meaning is just a miller. A miller is a person who owns and operates a mill, especially like a flour mill. So what's a mill? A mill is a grinding apparatus for grinding substances such as grains, seeds into like purely ground grains, seed for animals to eat, maybe. Yeah, most likely for animals to eat. And yeah, to mill is also to grind something in the mill machine. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So being a miller is also a pretty popular job back in the medieval age. It's the same as a blacksmith. In every village you go, there's always gonna be a miller. Yeah, it's not like a job that anybody can do. It's like a job that's necessary to the point that every single village needs to have one, because without a miller, you have no flour. Without flour, you have no bread. So a miller is absolutely vital, and any person who owns a miller is, yeah, pretty much an important asset to the whole village, and that's what the surname Miller came to be. It describes a person who is a miller, who creates flour for the bakers and all the other jobs, subsistence for the entire village. And the number of people that have a surname is around 1,361,000 in 2024 census. And linguistic construction of the surname it's actually interesting. It's different from Smith, which comes from like a purely Germanic word. Miller actually, in Middle English, Miller it was milled. In Old English, it was millen. And in like the I think it was like Proto-Western Germanic, it was molinu. And it comes from a Latin word actually, molina, which comes from the Latin verb molo, which means to grind. Yeah. So the miller, actually, the adjective to the verb to mill is actually a Latin derived word in one way or another. But yeah, but there's also like the variation of the surname Miller in German, which is Müller. So Müller is the most popular surname in the entirety of Germany for the same reason, because being a Müller in medieval German was absolutely vital. If you don't have Müller, you have no Becker. You know, Becker is also another popular surname. Becker is like a baker. Müller is like a miller, so they cannot survive without each other. So a baker makes bread, give it back to the miller to eat, and the miller makes flour to give it back to the baker. To create more bread. So it's like a mutual survival sort of like necessity. So that's why it's popular also in German. I forgot to add this, but surname Smith is also popular in German. Schmidt, it's just like a different variation of surname. Yeah, so for the same reason as well. All right, next one, Anderson. Anderson. So Anderson is it's a Scottish surname. Anderson is a Scottish surname. Yeah, even though it's the son part, it's in English, but it's actually Scottish in origin. Anderson. So Anderson, interestingly, the language of origin of the surname is Scottish Gaelic, which is a Celtic language, the brother to Welsh that I talked about earlier, and it's also from Hebrew. Oh, actually, no, no, no. Sorry about this one. This is a minor. This needs to be a bit of fixing. Actually, it's Scottish Gaelic and Greek and Greek. Okay, so that's important to fix. I'm gonna fix that later on. But the meaning of the surname is just son of Andrew. Son of Andrew. And the type of surname is just patronymic. There's around 1 million people with this surname. And Andrew here is none other than the Apostle St. Andrew. St. Andrew is the patron saint of Scotland. Then you can still see his device of execution, the cross with the shape X on Scotland flag to this day. A white X, a white, I think it's saltire on a green on a blue background. That's the flag of Scotland. That's the flag of St. Andrew. Because St. Andrew is the patron saint of Scotland. So St. Andrew was one of the 12 apostles of Christ, alongside with St. John. St. Andrew was the brother of St. Peter, who was the first pope. And St. Andrew was known in the Eastern Orthodox cycle as the first call, because the Eastern Orthodox, they want to believe that St. Andrew was actually the person that's most important in the apostles compared to St. Peter. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, just gonna mention that. Saint Andrew, he was brother of Saint Peter, and he was like a very much also major apostle in the Bible. And Saint Andrew later preached the gospel in Greece and Asia Minor. And he was executed. He was crucified in Greece on the cross with a shape X by the people there. And that's why the cross with the X shape became the symbol of St. Andrew. Anywhere that you go, you see a flag with X, most probably just refer to St. Andrew. And Scotland came to receive St. Andrew as their patron saint, and it just blew up from that point on. Lots of people named Andrew, and therefore lots of people named Anderson, son of Andrew. So it's Anderson is actually also it's a clan in Scotland, and the clan's original surname was MacGille Andres, which was like a purely Scottish Gaelic name that means like the son of the servant of Saint Andrew, MacGille Andres. But later it became like anglicized and became Anderson instead, which is the son of Andrew. All right, so uh, Andrew actually is a Greek name. It's not Hebrew. It's Greek, importantly. So it's weird that Saint Andrew, even though he was a Jew, he had a Greek name, but it's probably just a custom of the day. People having like different names in different languages, and also can because his parents were very much people who also like. It can also be because Andrew was a common name for Jewish people at the time in Israel, but yeah, Andrew is a Greek first name, and it comes from the Greek word Andreas. Andreas, the Greek rendition of this name is Andreas, and Andreas comes from the Greek word aner. Aner means a man, a man. So Andreas, the name Andrew, just means that's it, a man. But okay, so Andreas, it shares the same roots as the name Alexander. So as in Alexander the Great. So if you take a look at the name of the Alexander the Great in Greek is Alexandrias. Alexandrias. You see that? Alex and then Alexandrias. So Alexander is just the name Andrew with the Alex on top. So Alexandrias means a man, a strong man, or like a man who holds a shield, I think. If I remember correctly, a man who holds a shield, a man who is strong. like in a manner that is befitting a man. So that's the meaning of the name Alexander. And Andreas is just like uh, like a shortened way to shorten the name Alexander to Andreas. So it just means a man, basically. But yeah, that's the origin for the Anderson, and you can still see the surname Anderson to this day. Very much common among people with Scottish ancestry. I think it's ranked actually uh, pretty high in Scotland, and also lots of people in northern England, in the region like Marsh region, border between like Scotland and England, came to have the surname. Thanks to the fact that Scottish people migrated back and forth in the Marsh region to raid and to occupy new land in the English border and all of that thing. So yeah, it's also commonly found in like Northern English people. All right, so next one I'm gonna have is Wilson. So Wilson is the Anglo-Norman version of Williams. Williams is the Welsh-Norman version. Wilson is the Anglo-Norman version. So Wilson here just basically refers to son of Will. Will is the shortened form of the name William, so here just means son of William, same as Williams. The type of surname is patronymic, and number of bearers is around 973,000. So we see our first significant drop in terms of people here from the over 1 million point to the dower lower than 1 million point here with Wilson. And the linguistic construction of a surname it's just the same as before. William comes from the Anglo-Norman Willame, which comes from the Wilhelmas, which was the Proto-Germanic name, which means strong will helmet. That's pretty much the same thing. So Wilson is the Anglo-Norman version of the surname Williams. So it came to England. William came to England, and in Wales it became Williams. In other parts it became either Williamson or Wilson. Yeah, just like shortened version of that, basically. And here we have Wilson. We have a very famous person in history. We got President Woodrow Wilson, who was like often ranked as the worst president in the entire U.S. history because of the fact that he brought America to World War One, and at the same time he also showed the KKK movie, The Birth of a Nation, inside the White House, which is super racist for a president to do after the Civil War, obviously. Yeah, but that's pretty much for Wilson. Nothing much more than that, because it's just straightforward surname. All right, last surname of today. I'm gonna be covering the other ones for the next day, but for last surname for today is Garcia, the first Hispanic surname in the entire list. Garcia. Nation of origin, it's from Spain because it's a Hispanic surname. You go to any places in southern U.S., in southern Texas, in Arizona, New Mexico, California, meet any Mexican American family, or they can be Puerto Rican, they can be Guatemalan, Venezuelan, I don't know, Argentinian, any of that. Always, there's gonna be one person with the surname Garcia, either as their parents' last name, either as their mother's last name or father's last name, because the Spanish people have like a different naming custom. You have to retain both the surname of your father and your mother, and same name as yours. So father's surname comes first, mother's surname comes later. Yeah. So Garcia is ridiculously popular. You go to anywhere and you always see a person with the surname Garcia. So Garcia, it's actually a Basque surname. Surprisingly. So Basque is a language isolate. It means that Basque is a language that's not related to any other languages in Europe. And the Basque people inhabit the region that is in the eastern part of the Pyrenees, the mountainous region that cut off between France. It's the natural border between France and Spain. So the Basque people inhabit there, and their language, the Basque language, is a language isolate, meaning that it's not related to any other languages. It's not even related to like any Indo-European languages. Basque language is totally separated from any other languages. We do not know how it came to be that way. We do not know who the ancestors were. We only know that the Basque people, they're unique, and they're so unique that they became like a sort of like a bit of a bit of a like a have like a strong identity in terms of like, their national identity. So there's a lot of like movement to about like Basque more getting more independence and autonomy and all of that. So even though the Basque people later came to be under the dominion of Spain, which is a Romance-speaking people, uh, they actually became the source of a lot of different surnames in Spain. A lot of different names in Spain as well. So Garcia is one of these. Garcia is actually, I think, is also one of the most popular surnames in Spain in the top 10, and in a lot of countries where Spain used to be like the colonizer, and it's very ridiculously popular. And the meaning of a surname just mean the young. It's a cognomial surname, meaning that a person is the youngest person in the family or the younger person in the family. Usually used to distinguish between like elder person in the family. Like if a family has three children, and obviously the eldest child is going to be the one to inherit most of the land. The younger ones are going to be the ones that are going to be sent to the monasteries, become priests, and any of that. And even the younger ones, they may not have any landlord; they have to fend off for themselves. And to distinguish the elder from the younger, they call the younger one the young. So in Basque, it's Gaztea. Gaztea means the young, like in the young person. So in the illustration, we got like two Basque soldier. One is a very young Basque soldier that's drawn in a 16th century German books, I think. So not very much Basque, but the way that they dress is Basque. So I guess that's the most important thing. So yeah, with the surname Garcia, we end today's first 10 surnames, first investigation of the 10 most popular surnames in the U.S. So obviously, there's gonna be like I don't know, like probably like 1,000 more. No, actually 1,000 divided by 10 is 100. So 99 more videos like this, just diving into the origin of each and every single surname in the US until when we finish the 1,000 list. So there's gonna be a lot more after this. So this is just obviously the first one. It already occupied like 52 minutes of my life. But yeah, I think it's worth it to take a look at all of these surnames to see how America itself, it's still pretty much like a Anglo country, like in the sense that most of the inhabitants are still pretty much English people. Because you look at the surname, you see that like most of these ones, if you take a look here, Garcia is the only Hispanic one so far, and it's only the 10th most popular one. Before that, you see like here, yeah, English, we have one Scottish representative here. We got one English here, one Welsh, another English, another Welsh, English, English. So one, two, three, four. I would say that five. Okay, around five representatives here are English. One is Scottish. Three are Welsh, and one is Hispanic. That's a very good representation of the origin of all of these people so far in terms of ancestry through the surnames. Because the United Kingdom, where most of the immigrants to America came from, is divided into four countries. So we got Wales, we got England, and we got Scotland. Northern Ireland is kind of like a different thing. It's like the people who inhabit Northern Ireland that came to be known as Ulster Scots because they were Scottish people and Northern English people who migrated, who were planted, who colonized Northern Ireland to replace the Catholic and to become more Protestant, to make it more Protestant. So yeah, it's like yeah, even Northern Ireland itself is not really Irish. It's more like Ulster Scots, more like Northern English vibe. So yeah, it's a very good representation of the surnames of the different people in the United Kingdom because you got you got English being the most popular source of surnames here so far in the 10 surnames. England being the most popular origin. Next we got three from Wales because Welsh people. There's a lack of natural border between Wales and England. Lots of people migrated from Wales to southern England and southern England to Wales, back and forth, like that. So it still makes sense that those people would do something like that. And yeah, we also got one Scottish representative with Anderson, and yeah, we also got one Hispanic representation with Garcia, just to yeah remind us that America so far even though it's Anglo-Norman, it's like an Anglo, pretty much a Anglo-Scottish Welsh country, but still have a lot of influx of Spanish people, Hispanic people coming over, and yeah, that's why they're still teaching Spanish as a second language in most American schools to this day, except in Louisiana, which they use French, but it's not important because it's a different place. But yeah, well, that's it so far the 10 most popular surnames here in the U.S. Probably there's gonna be another one about the next 10 most popular ones, and then just gonna continue on to finish this 1,000 ones. But thank you very much for watching.